Need your daily fix on mixed martial arts?
We're going to kind of recap Bellator 155.
From UFC 198.
Who's who?
Kind of a controversial decision.
And who's not?
I couldn't figure out why, and then it hit me.
Well, don't you fret, because Golden State Media Concepts got you covered. Get your daily dose of MMA podcasts. Everything from the UFC, Bellator Fighting Championship, Extreme Cage Fighting, Invicta Fighting Championship, and so much more. Join us as we talk about some of the biggest names in mixed martial arts. We've got you covered here on Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast.
Thank you for tuning into the GSMC MMA Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Arnel De Leon, and hopefully you are doing well for yourself. You are fine, you are healthy, whether you live in the States or internationally. Hopefully you are healthy during a time of uncertainty. Don't forget to hit the subscribe and like button, that really helps up a lot. So, UFC 249, it is official! Sort of, at the very least, that we get confirmation from Dana White himself that it will be headlined by Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje at UFC 249. Location remains unknown. This is coming in from several news sites, including MMA Junkie and BJ Penn, along with ESPN, all saying that Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson will be officially happening at UFC 249 on April 18th. Now, where will the location be? Nobody knows. There is still a sense of intrigue of what exactly is going to happen at UFC 249, but we now know 100% that Khabib Nurmagomedov is indeed out of the event. So Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje, this match hasn't speculated to happen. We've got confirmation from different sources, one of them being Khabib himself, saying that the UFC is indeed looking out for a replacement for Khabib when it was notified that Khabib would be stuck in Russia. So to those of you who don't know, initially the main event was going to be Khabib Nurmagomedov versus Tony Ferguson in a title fight at UFC 249 at the Barclays Center. But because New York has gone through a period of lockdown, the state of New York has gone through a period of lockdown to which only essential businesses, quote unquote, said by Donald Trump, our president of the United States, that only essential businesses can continue to work as normally. So, the UFC was debated to be like, is the UFC or mixed martial arts, is that considered essential? Is, like, basketball considered essential? Are some grocery stores considered essential? You got places like GameStop and Best Buy making the claim that it is essential. So, while Best Buy is still open, it's still open off the basis that it sells electronics that are used every day. So, an electronics store is considered essential. GameStop, which also claimed the same thing, is not considered electronics since that's purely just video games. So GameStop gets forced to shut down in the California area at the very least, while places like Walmart, Target, your local grocery stores, Best Buy, and restaurants, those are definitely open. Those are considered essential businesses. And I talk about this because there was a recent conference call lately by sports commissioners that included Adam Silver, Dana White, and also, strangely enough, Vincent Kennedy McMahon from the WWE. So they had those sports officials there, and Vince McMahon. They had a conference call with President Donald Trump to discuss whether or not these sports events are considered essential businesses. So while the NBA currently right now is speculating that the NBA season should be canceled, and I don't think that has much to do with whether or not the NBA season being canceled has less to do with whether or not NBA sports are considered essential and more of a scheduling conflict issue right now. Because stuff like March Madness, the drafting, free agency, players taking time off in between seasons, taking those part of off season, doing summer training camp. People have set up for like traveling and like vacation during the off season. Off season is a very major part to the NBA season, and because of the issue with COVID-19, the NBA season has been placed kind of on lockdown. And now, even though they might be considered an essential business, because there's just so much like money and revenue going through basketball, and whether you think it's essential or not is kind of your own personal opinion. I kind of believe it's a little bit essential, considering the fact that, covering sports is my job. So the NBA now, they're going through an issue when it comes to scheduling their offseason because there's a lot of foreplanning involved when it comes towards the NBA. For the UFC though, the UFC they, unlike the NFL or the NHL or MLB or baseball or basketball, they can mix around match cards and events. For instance, we had Francis Ngannou versus Rosenstrike. That fight was supposed to happen a week or two ago, and now that event can now happen in the next 2 weeks, or it can happen in Christmas. They can ship and shape around how their events work out. And because of that, unlike other sporting events, the UFC and other mixed martial art events are a lot more flexible and can adjust to stuff like lockdowns happening. And so, it is very funny. It was announced the night before it was announced that Justin Gaethje would go fight Tony Ferguson. According to Ariel Helwani on Twitter, he said that the fight between Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson would happen. I'm going to read out what Ariel Helwani said on his Twitter. Breaking: Dana White and Vladimir Putin have reached an agreement on travel arrangements for UFC lightweight champion Khabib Nurmagomedov to come to the United States. He will fight Tony Ferguson. It's happening, folks. UFC 249 will go on as scheduled April 18. This was tweeted out on April 4th, not April 1st. So Helwani has no really reason to lie. And Dana White immediately responded. He responded with, "Absolutely not true." He capitalized the word "not" with 3 exclamation marks. Absolutely not true. This card is happening, but Team Khabib is out. I will announce the entire card tomorrow. So it is announced that Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson will be the official headline, and Khabib Nurmagomedov is out. And so, where does lead Khabib? So Khabib said on an Instagram story that someone told him, "Hey Khabib, why don't you go and take a private jet and travel out?" Apparently Khabib says that the airlines international travel within Russia is very different. But he says that he is perfectly fine fighting Tony Ferguson. All he needs is a location, a date, and a time. And so far, no one has given Khabib any news. My speculation is the fact that when Dana White or some UFC representative told Khabib Nurmagomedov that the event was going to go happen in the United Arab Emirates, Khabib, without telling the UFC, made their own independent, individual, they're oh, we're gonna travel to UAE, and we're gonna check the location, we're gonna check the events, we're gonna prep ourselves up when we do travel there. So they went to the UAE without telling anyone else. They traveled there, then they were told, oh yeah, the event is not gonna happen at the UAE. So they went back to Russia out of their own volition. They should have went back to the United States. So, from what I'm getting out of this, there's a huge miscommunication issue between Khabib Nurmagomedov and the representatives of the UFC, the matchbookers. I'm guessing that they were discussing how things were supposed to go through. Team Khabib had one idea on how the event was going to go through, and then the UFC weren't monitoring Khabib as much, because if you've been following Khabib Nurmagomedov through his social media, through his Instagram, through his Twitter, and if you listen to all what their managers are talking about and his training and his coaches, they're all saying Khabib pretty much ignores he's ignoring everything that's happened in the world as it pertains to the coronavirus. Khabib is focused primarily just Ferguson, just the fight, just the title fight, just Ferguson. He only cares about the fight. He's completely ignoring everything else that's happening in the world. I think there's a tweet that said whatever's happening in the world, I don't care. I just want to fight Tony Ferguson at UFC 249. And there is some fault there coming at the side of Team Khabib, and that they should have taken this issue a lot more serious. In that they were kept training, ignoring everything else, and then they started traveling when they should have known that international travel, as of right now, especially in the States and also around the world, but especially in the States, is in this complicated, weird mess right now. I've got friends who are supposed to travel to the Philippines and to Canada and into some parts of Asia, because I got a lot of Asian friends. I'm also supposed to travel to the Philippines, but because of the whole COVID-19 issue right now, it is very complicated and I won't be able to do it. So Khabib should have been more informed about this issue, about international flighting, and he should have been you know what? Yeah, I'm focused on Ferguson, but I need to pay attention on this COVID-19 issue. He didn't focus that much onto the issue. Nobody from the UFC, because they themselves don't take the issue that seriously. They don't tell Khabib the issue about international fighting. So overall, just huge miscommunication issues from both the UFC part and from Team Khabib's part. So in the end, we are going to have Tony Ferguson versus Justin Gaethje for the interim title. I don't think Khabib's title will be vacated. I don't see any reason for that because nobody can predict COVID-19 being an issue. There's no way anyone could have predicted this being an issue by January of 2020, like 4 months ago. No one could have predicted that. And because of that reason, I think it would be unfair, and it should be an interim title fight to headline when it comes to Ferguson versus Gaethje. Coming back right after the break, we will discuss some more MMA news, starting off with TJ Dillashaw.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts. Past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
This news breaking in from SB Nation, TJ Dillashaw is granted immediate UFC title shot upon return from USADA suspension. Former UFC bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw recently crossed the halfway mark of his 2-year suspension from USADA, a result of his positive drug test after losing to Henry Cejudo in the UFC on ESPN1 flyweight main event back in January of 2019. Dillashaw, 34, was stripped of his title as part of his disciplinary timeout. But according to the former Ultimate Fighter champion finalist, the promotion is willing to grant him an immediate title shot upon his return into action. That said, even Dillashaw knows the likelihood of UFC keeping its word is remote. This is from a recent interview at MMA Junkie by Dillashaw. I was told that I would get a title fight when I came back, but that doesn't mean anything, Dillashaw told MMA Junkie. I made a mistake. I don't own rights to anything, but if it was my choice, it would be the title fight. If not top 5 to prove I should get the title fight. I'm hoping they just throw me to the dogs. If I can get the title fight, I want someone in the top 5 so that I can get my title fight. I'm not here to play around. I want my belt back. It's mine. Dillashaw, 16-4, originally dropped his bantamweight belt in a split decision loss to Dominic Cruz back in early 2016, but was able to punch his way back into contention and finishing Cody Garbrandt in a pair of back-to-back title fights. His desire to join the Champ Club, meaning he wanted to be double champion, and it was very likely. So when TJ Dillashaw fought Henry Cejudo, it was expected that TJ Dillashaw would win that fight. I predicted Dillashaw winning that fight. The general consensus that was TJ Dillashaw was going to win that fight, and he was going to become a double champion. Henry Cejudo came to that fight as the underdog just because the flyweight division wasn't all that stacked, and so when you compared the credibility of Dillashaw versus the credibility of Cejudo, like Cejudo's like biggest accomplishment with his two biggest accomplishments in the UFC would be him defeating Benavidez and Demetrius Johnson. And yes, Demetrius Johnson is arguably the greatest UFC champion of all time in UFC history. That is true, and I praise Cejudo for doing that. But when you look at that total accumulation of people that Cejudo has defeated in the division in order to go get his flyweight belt versus TJ Dillashaw over the people that he defeated in the bantamweight division of him defeating going up against toe-to-toe with people like Dominic Cruz, Renan Barão, Cody Garbrandt. TJ Dillashaw has gone through a lot. He's gone through a lot more obstacles in his route to becoming champion compared to Cejudo, because the flyweight division, when compared to the bantamweight division, is a lot less weaker, and also the bantamweight division, at one point, one could argue, was the most stacked division in the entire UFC. So, on his route to becoming double champion, it was said here that, however, he was unable to get out of the first round against Cejudo, who followed up with his Dillashaw victory with an emphatic win over Marlon Moraes to capture the vacant 135-pound strap. Now, so TJ Dillashaw, he's buying in for an immediate title fights. Do I think he deserves the title fights? Personally, not really sure, because there are other fighters who are climbing up within the bantamweight division that I believe deserve some. They deserve to be rewarded for sticking to the rules. I don't think it's right, even though UFC has done this before in the past, especially with John Jones. I don't think it's right to reward fighters with immediate title shots when they have not been present for the company for X amount of time. Like, even though GSP is one of the greatest fighters in the history of all time, like I didn't think it was right for him to skip over a lot of people to go fight Michael Bisping for a title. Same way, I don't think it was right for same reason I think Chuck Liddell were to somehow come back from retirement, and we all know Chuck Liddell should not be fighting at all. Even if Chuck Liddell came back, and his reasoning for coming back is like, hey, okay, I deserve a title fight because I'm a former champion, and I defeated a bunch of Hall of Famers and legends to become one of the best ever. Like, yes, his history from like years ago is really good, but he hasn't done anything recently. And so when I look at people like John Jones, him being gone for a while, like him, maybe he's gonna be gone for a while, possibly again after his recent issue. He might get his light heavyweight belt stripped, but we all know John Jones is gonna get an immediate title fight or go for an number one contendership. And I think the same thing applies to DJ Dillashaw. Yes, the dude's been gone for a year, and if he's gone for another year, because he's only halfway through in his USADA position, if he's gone for another year, then he's gonna fight. Then he's gonna fight yet again the top 5 people. I'm not really sure actually. So Dillashaw still has another year going on, and let's go look at the rankings of what we can expect here. I don't think Dillashaw is going to go fight at flyweight again, because the last 2 times he did that, it didn't went well for him. So in the bantamweight division, the belt that Henry Cejudo currently upholds, so I think that TJ Dillashaw wants to buy in for a rematch against Henry Cejudo, because I think TJ Dillashaw, if he were to prep up better and fight against Henry Cejudo, would do a lot more better job. I think he came to that fight way too cocky, and he had so much overconfidence that he kept making a lot of mistakes. When he fought against like Cody Garbrandt and like Dominic Cruz and Brandon Brown, he was a very smart, very quick counterfighter who fought very patiently. Now when you saw, this also kind of happened to like Jessica Andrade. It's like when you win the belt, you're all of a sudden like very aggressive, and it takes time for him to develop like the patience to become a champion and to become dominant at the same time. So when TJ Dillashaw was buying in for to being a double champion, I think he came to the fight overconfident, and he was like, I'm gonna beat this guy, and so he lost the patience, and he was trying to go for an immediate win in the first round. That didn't help out well for him. That didn't help out. I knew he built some like false confidence with fighting against Cody Garbrandt, who fights pretty recklessly, but Henry Cejudo doesn't fight reckless at all. He fights very smart and very patient, and I would think that TJ Dillashaw would be a lot more patient, and he'd be able to utilize his wrestling game and his very amazing boxing game in order for him to defeat Henry Cejudo. That didn't turn out well. He was way too reckless. And in a rematch, I would put my money down on TJ Dillashaw winning in a rematch. But he shouldn't fight Henry Cejudo though. He really shouldn't, because he's coming off a suspension. And I think if you did something wrong, you got to work your way up for it within the division. So let's see his matchups here. He can fight Jose Aldo. He can fight Cody Garbrandt again, which I could see that happening. Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw 3. It could happen again, because Cody Garbrandt is still in his redeem arc phase. Cody Garbrandt has lost his past 3 fights, and Cody Garbrandt just got injured again. And I can easily see that being a money fight, because I think it was a money fight between Dillashaw versus Cody Garbrandt. That fight headlined a card, and I can see them doing a third fight being a co-main event. So even though one guy got suspended and another guy is in a losing streak, that fight has enough history and story behind it that can definitely co-main event UFC pay-per-view. So he can fight Cody Garbrandt again. He can fight Jose Aldo, who was number 6 ranked in the bantamweight division. It's weird knowing that Jose Aldo, one of the best ever, is ranked number 6. That's an incredibly tough fight. Honestly, with how good of a fighter TJ Dillashaw is, even though he's a cheater, with his skills, I could easily see him having fight of the nights against guys like Jose Aldo, Rafael Sansao, Cody Sanagan, Peter Yan, Aljamain Sterling, Marlon Moraes. Any of these guys from Henry Cejudo down, there are 7 maybe 8 fighters who you can see defeat TJ Dillashaw. TJ Dillashaw, depending on how TJ Dillashaw returns when he comes back. I think Dillashaw has all the tools to defeat every one of these fighters. I think he has the tools to knock out Marlon Moraes. I think he has the tools to knock out Cody Garbrandt. I think he has the tools to go and out wrestle Henry Cejudo. I think he has everything it takes. I think he has his striking ability and reverse counterfighting game. I think that's good enough to defeat Jose Aldo. He has all the tools. Do I think he should get title fights? No. And do I think these fights against these fighters like Peter Yan, Aljamain Sterling are going to be great? Yes, I do think so. I think TJ Dillashaw has a long way to go. He has to fight 2, maybe 3 people until he gets his bantamweight title back, which is a real shame. Because if TJ Dillashaw did not go through this period of being suspended, if he did not get suspended, if he was not a cheater and he was still holding on to the bantamweight title, if he wasn't vying to be a double champion, I could see TJ Dillashaw still being the bantamweight champion right now. If Henry Cejudo just stick towards the flyweight division, and TJ Dillashaw just stick towards the bantamweight division, Dillashaw could still be the champion for the bantamweights. But as of right now, that's not going to happen. And when he does come back to the UFC, he's got a long way to go, and he's got a lot of exciting fights coming up for TJ Dillashaw. A lot of fun fights, and I can't wait for him to come back in a year. I don't think he should get a title fight, but I think he should start competing against the top contenders of the division. So we'll be coming back right after the break here with some more MMA news. You are listening to the GSMC MMA podcast.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
So we talked about TJ Dillashaw making the return to the bantamweight division after his USADA suspension, but there's another fighter, a former bantamweight champion, who hopes to go down in division, and that is Cody Garbrandt. Cody Garbrandt here says that he wants to really save the flyweight division. This coming in from ESPN, Cody Garbrandt discusses his desire to move down to 125 in the future and how a weight cut wouldn't be too difficult. Former UFC bantamweight champion Cody Garbrandt says he has recovered from the kidney issues that forced him to pull out of a scheduled fight against Rafael Sanzao last month, and he is looking forward booking a fight as soon as the UFC resumes operations following the coronavirus-related postponements. Garbrandt is even considering booking something in a new weight class. Garbrandt, 11-3, after losing his past 3 fights after going 11-0, told ESPN he has unfinished business with Assunção, but he has also discussed with his manager, Ali Abdelaziz, I'm sorry, I can't pronounce his name correctly, Ali Abdelaziz, the possibility of dropping to flyweight. I walk around at 145, I'm strong, fast, and I can keep that at 25. That's the plan. Me and Ali spoke about doing this. First, we were focused on Rafael, and that's still the fight to make. They then go down and really save the flyweight division. I'm not really sure about that. If he intends to go to the flyweight division, there's no reason for him to go fight Rafael. There absolutely isn't. Then he should go buy in for a fight against Benavidez, or try to go for a tune-up fight against someone like John Dodson. Those are the smart fights to make if Cody Garbrandt really is committed to fighting at flyweight. But yeah, I just don't see this happening. If he's gonna fight at 125, there's absolutely no point in terms of booking a fight between Garbrandt and Rafael. So the UFC considered closing the 125-pound flyweight division last year, but ultimately elected to keep it. The title is currently vacant, as former 2-weight champion Henry Cejudo recently left the weight class. UFC President Dana White has said he intends to book a rematch of a fight between Benavidez and Deiveson Figueiredo for the belt later this year. Figueiredo defeated Benavidez on February 29 just because he missed weight. The bout was not for the title. Garbrandt, 28, was forced to pull out of the Assunção bout due to kidney issues that apparently stemmed from a staph infection during camp. He said he's open to bouncing back and forth between both weight classes and believes even though he's on a 0-3 skid, he's only one fight away from a potential title shot. Henry's fighting people coming off loss, said Garbrandt, referring to a scheduled title fight against Jose Aldo. I might as well keep losing and I'll get a title shot. He's calling out Jose when Jose just got beat by Marlon Moraes. He's calling out Dominic Cruz. No one has seen him since I whooped his butt in 2016. I get it. He wants a guy that moves the needle. I'm one fight away. I'm the biggest straw in the division, no matter what, bantamweight or flyweight. He does pull the needle, but it's very circumstantial when it comes to him. Garbrandt has been knocked out in 3 consecutive fights, but he attributes that to fighting without a game plan and being too willing to brawl. Before his fight with Assunção was cancelled, the longtime member of Team Alpha Male in Sacramento had been cross-training with striking coach Mark Henry in New Jersey, and he says that he and Henry have corrected the mistakes he was making. I let those guys get knockouts. I let TJ Dillashaw do that. I let Pedro Munoz do that. Garbrandt says, I fought in those kind of fights susceptible to getting knocked out. The way I know how to fight, clear mind, clear heart, goal vision, I have that back. So, Cody Garbrandt saying that he can go save the flyweight division, and he is fine fighting in both the bantamweight and the flyweight division. I seriously doubt they're gonna allow him to do that, really. He has to be committed to one division. I think it is a smart idea for Cody Garbrandt to be committed to the 125 flight division, just because there's a lot less heavy hitters there compared to the bantamweight division. I'm saying that while fighters like Marlon Moraes is there. So, but Cody Garbrandt, he's a really tall dude. He can honestly fight at 145 if he really wants to. I think his natural weight is 145, and so he's perfect to fight at the 145 pound division, but that's not going to happen because Cody Garbrandt was knocking people out left and right in the bantamweight division, and he won't be able to do that if he were to go up one weight class where he's going out and gets a lot more bigger people, and I think he is more likely to be more of a dominant presence in the flyweight division. Now, do I think he actually is going to be committed to both divisions? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I don't know. This could just be Cody Garbrandt hyping himself up. He's doing that thing that almost every fighter does. If you go on almost every fighter's Twitter, every MMA fighter, whether it be Cormier, Stipe Miocic, John Jones, Alexander Gustafsson, Henry Cejudo, TJ Dillashaw, even when Michael Bisping was the champion, there's even rumors all the time about GSP coming back and getting 2 belts. It's like every fighter wants to pick and choose their divisions and try to go up and down, which is so strange since a lot of these fighters fight only once or twice a year. So there's a chance that, here's the thing, Henry Cejudo was the double champion, but how long was he the double champion, and how often was he fighting for both divisions? It just doesn't seem reasonable for a person to hold 2 belts. It's never been reasonable. It's never ever, here's the thing. If you win 2 belts in a division, you gotta get rid of one. That's just how it is now. Because it's expected that a champion should defend his belt. They should defend his belt 2 times a year. That's how I want it to be. I would like it if a fighter were to defend his belt 2 times a year. And so now we're having fighters defend their belt 1 time a year. And if they're a champion from 2 different divisions, like let's say Daniel Cormier. So, if Cormier is light heavyweight champion, and he was the heavyweight champion, he would defend his light heavyweight belt once. He would defend the belt once in 2020, and then he wouldn't defend his heavyweight belt, and then he would defend his heavyweight belt in 2021. Because these fighters are not that stupid. They want to maintain the belt as long as they possibly can, and not risk the chance of them, getting a huge major, pay cuts when they lose the belt. It's just so risky. And so, when you have Cody Garbrandt saying, I am 1 title fight away from getting a title shot, I get it. UFC has a tendency of doing this for the past couple of years, where you got fighters who've lost their most recent fight, who are all of a sudden having a title fight, and that shouldn't be happening. By that is, even Cody Garbrandt's joking about it. Jose Aldo lost. Actually, if you look at the rankings, Jose Aldo is number 6 rank, is the 6th ranked best fighter in the flyweight division. He's number 6. No. He's number 6 in the bantamweight division. Jose Aldo is the number 6 ranked fighter in the bantamweight division, Yet he fought against Marlon Moraes in the flyweight division. Marlon's the number 2 ranked guy. So you have the number 2 ranked flyweight division fighter fight against the number 6 ranked bantamweight fighter. And then we have Jose Aldo losing despite not being even really ranked in the flyweight division, getting a number 1 contendership fight against Henry Cejudo. That makes no sense. That's why we always get reports all the time of gatekeepers and a lot of fighters, even former UFC fighters, always saying, "Hey, isn't it unfair that a fighter can lose their job in the UFC after losing 1 fight, while there are some fighters who who go on a losing streak and all of a sudden get a title fight?" Not really right, I think. It's not. I understand the unfairness, and that's the reality of things for the UFC. Now, do I think Cody Garbrandt is 1 or 2 fights away from getting a title fight? I don't really think so. His stock has dropped down immensely. I remember 2-3 years ago, Joe Rogan says that Cody Garbrandt, dude, he has all the potential to become the face of the entire UFC, man. He's a good-looking guy, great striker, has heavy hands. He also has a very underrated wrestling background that he doesn't ever utilize ever. Cody Garbrandt can wrestle really, really well for himself, but he just doesn't do it though because he has so much confidence in his striking. Garbrandt has all the tools and the skills like Dillashaw. But just like Dillashaw, if his head is not in the right place, he begins to make a lot of mistakes. And when he fight against Henry Cejudo, Cody Garbrandt, it's just, because Henry Cejudo really angered TG Dillashaw very quickly in the fights. People always underrate because people always prep up how good Cejudo's wrestling is, that they underrate his striking ability. And so, if Cejudo were to fight against Garbrandt, I can easily see, based off Garbrandt's recent history, of Garbrandt being tilted and getting angry and getting himself in a position that lends to him getting knocked out, the same way Dillashaw did. Coming back right after the break, we'll be discussing some more MMA news right here, the GSMC MMA podcast. We'll be right back soon.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
So we're discussing Cody Garbrandt going into possibly flyweight and fighting the bantamweight division at the same time. I find it very unlikely. But as we're talking about Cody Garbrandt, one thing that I've always questioned about Cody Garbrandt is whether or not he's going to switch camps. Because I've been a firm believer that he should switch camps in order for him to take MMA a lot more serious, is how I imagine it. Because when you look at Team Alpha Male, which is the gym that Cody Garbrandt trained, yes, Cody Garbrandt, through training with Team Alpha Male with Uriah Faber, was able to become a champion. He became the bantamweight champion, but it helped him out up to a certain point, which was my issue with Team Alpha Male. I think Team Alpha Male did a really great job in propelling Cody Garbrandt in a situation to which he became a champion. But then afterwards, he has to move on towards other trainers in order to develop his skill. Because at this very moment, though, he has been 0-3 recently. He's gotten 3 losses in a row. And all those 3 losses involve him going for being a headhunter and trying to go for reckless striking and trying to go for the knockout victory when he really shouldn't be, and he should fight a lot more smarter. And then we have a person like Uriah Faber who runs Team Alpha Male. And Uriah Faber, if you hear him in interviews, he always says how there's very like a chill, there's a very chill Southern California vibe when it comes to Team Alpha Male. That it's a lot more relaxed, a lot less strict, and it's it comes across, if you saw the Ultimate Fighter when it was like Team Uriah Faber versus Team Conor McGregor, Uriah Faber has such like a chill attitude when it comes to how his fighters should how they should present themselves. It's always like, hey, we're Team Alpha Male, we're the best, we train, yeah. when I see Cody Garbrandt in Team Alpha Male, I see him very relaxed, more relaxed than he really should be in that. And there's less accountability when it comes to training with Team Alpha Male. When I'm saying that is when Uriah Faber, he did some interviews about Cody Garbrandt when Cody was the champion. I think it was the Joe Rogan podcast or some other review. But Uriah Faber did an interview where he was like, yeah, man, Cody Garbrandt, he doesn't like training. He doesn't like any cardio-based activities like running all the time. He's always focused on like doing like either weightlifting or some shadow boxing drills or some like boxing exercises or kickboxing exercises. He does not like running at all. He finds it very boring. He doesn't find any enjoyment out of it. And when Uriah Faber listens to Cody Garbrandt and Cody tells him, hey, I don't want to do any running at all. It's not me. I don't find enjoyment out of that. And I do think that working out should be enjoyment. I find working out an enjoyment. Lifting weights is really fun to me. It's kind of a hobby. So I understand Cody's perspective on it though. But I would like it if there was somebody, if there's a coach or there's somebody in Team Alpha Male who's like, Cody, you don't dictate how this training goes. We dictate how it goes because we know what's best for you. Team Alpha Male, I don't really see a coach-student relationship. I see mostly a guy there, he's fighting, and he's with a bunch of other guys who also enjoy fighting. It's more bro-y. It's more of a collective than it is. Here's a coach. He knows what he's doing. Here's a fighter who wants to learn what to do next and how to advance his career. That's how I see the relationship between Cody Garbrandt and Team Alpha Male. So I would like it a lot more if Cody were to switch up his next camp if he were to lose in the next fight. And I'm talking about Team Alpha Male right now because Uriah Faber, who just came back from retirement and lost recently, UFC is coming in from Daily Caller. UFC star Uriah Faber confronts alleged thieves with a baseball bat and a bullwhip. Turns out to be the wrong people. So UFC superstar Uriah Faber recently had a wild interaction with some people he thought stole his baby stroller. Faber said during an interview with TMZ that he grabbed a bullwhip and a baseball bat to confront their homeless people he thought were responsible for stealing his expensive stroller. Faber says he came across a homeless camp with the stroller and approached it with the bat. However, upon closer inspection, it turned out to be the same brand, but not his. You can watch him recount the story below, so you can go find the TMZ interview on YouTube. It's about 4 minutes. It's Uriah Faber without a shirt in I'm guessing in Taos, California, talking about, hey man, I went out and someone took my stroller. It's gone now, and I attacked these other people that also had my stroller. It's really funny. You get to see the humorous side of Uriah Faber. But Faber should be a lot more smarter going forward. I'm not sure pushing a homeless camp armed with a bat is a good idea. It really isn't. Being a person who's lived in Southern California for a large part of their life, a large part of my life has been in the California area. If I'm not living in Southern California, I'm living up in Northern California. And the California area, in the general sense, has a homelessness issue. A lot of people running around with schizophrenia, and I understand where Uriah Faber is coming from here. There's a lot of hostilities among the citizens of California and the homeless people. And I say right now, it ain't good at all grabbing a bat and threatening a bunch of homeless people to like, hey man, give me my stroller. Because these homeless people, they don't know what they're doing for the most part. A lot of them has mental health issues, and that's not just a California thing, really. Even though there's a lot of people in the California area, more than any other state in America, that's undergoing homelessness issues. California, more than any other state, going through the most problems. There's a lot of people who are losing a lot of money in the California area. A lot. Especially in Southern California. A lot. So, Faber, I say don't bring a baseball bat and threaten people in the beaches or under a bridge anywhere in California with a baseball bat, and you're asking, hey, give me my stroller. Because trust me, I know from personal experience, they don't know what they're doing. I'm telling you this. One time, there was a period in my life to which I was homeless, and I had to go live in Southern California, like being homeless, and I had to go like sleep in cars and sleep under stuff. And during that time period, there would be homeless people who would come in and would go and take my stuff. And so they'd go take my stuff. And I'd ask them, hey, did you take my backpack or my glasses or my clothes or whatever? And they would say, no, I don't know what you're talking about. And then even when the police are interrogating them, being like, did you take anything? The person's like, no, I don't remember anything. I'm minding my own business. And then it's obvious that the homeless person took my stuff. So I got their stuff. And so I got my stuff back, and the homeless person's like, what? I don't remember ever taking that. Like, I don't remember ever taking your clothes. I don't remember taking your glasses at all. And there's absolutely zero reason why a homeless person with like mental health issues should deny if they ever commit anything. And the truth is that for the most part, they're just going through mental health issues like schizophrenia or dementia, and they just can't comprehend their own actions. So, I understand Uriah Faber's perspective here, but really, don't beat up homeless people, especially when it's very likely that they're dealing with mental health issues, and they just cannot help themselves. So yeah. So overall though, Cody Garbrandt, if things do not end up well for you in your next fight, if you really are committed to the idea of fighting in the flyweight division, then hopefully your training camp and how things go for your camp ends up well for you. Because from my perspective, I don't see you becoming a better fighter in Team Alpha Male. I see you being in a comfortable area to which you're fighting with other people who you're comfortable with, and you're in a situation that makes you really content with yourself. But I'm not seeing Cody Garbrandt develop into being the best fighter he possibly can. Because if you look at TJ Dillashaw's, if you look at every fight that Cody Garbrandt has been in, he's fought pretty much the exact same way, and that's pretty much him being a headhunter. And if he doesn't fight the way that he wants, or he's not comfortable fighting if he's not being a headhunter, he fights out of his element and he's very uncomfortable with himself and he lets all his emotions fly off, and you can tell by his face. You can pause at moments in both of his TJ Dillashaw fights and his Munoz fights. You can pause at the moment where he's like, you know what? I'm gonna start fighting smart. I'm gonna stop trying to be the smart fighter. I'm gonna stop trying to pick out, the best angles to which I can go and make the best shots. I'm gonna stop doing body shots. I'm gonna stop doing kicks. I'm gonna stop even attempting for the clinch. I will just go for right haymakers and try to knock you out. And of course, him going for right haymakers leads to the other guy who's still fully aware, who's still not letting his emotions get control of him, is gonna duck over and lean in for a right haymaker themselves and then knock out Cody Garbrandt. I understand Cody is tough, but seriously, you need to rethink on how you prep yourself up for training camp. And in the recent interview where he said, you know what, the past 3 times I fought, to which I lost, my head was not in the right position, and this time my head is going to be in the right position. Actually, he's saying the same stuff he's been saying since his first loss against TJ Dillashaw. And until he moves on to a new camp or Team Alpha Male hires somebody who's a lot more stricter in how they train their fighters, then that's when I believe Cody Garbrandt is going to take the next step in his career as an MMA fighter. Because he has so much talent. He's good looking. He's a family guy. He's got skills. He's really funny. Very entertaining. It's only he doesn't let his emotions get the better of him in his fights. That's all I'm hoping for Cody Garbrandt. Hopefully he wins, and whether or not he'll be committed to the flyweight division or the bantamweight division, we don't know yet. We'll see in his next fight. So coming up after the break, we will look into some more MMA news here, including Islam Makhachev and a new location for the next upcoming UFC events. Coming up right after the break.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
While Uriah Faber is carrying his bat around, threatening to beat up the homeless people in California, we got news here on the potential of UFC moving its events in the States. But that has been shut down. The UFC has the capability to, this coming in from Yahoo Sports, take it or leave it. The UFC has the capability to hold its own closed-door events in its Las Vegas campus, including full production equipment, but it won't be able to utilize its facilities to hold events for the foreseeable future. Nevada State Athletic Commission Executive Director Bob Bennett informed MMAweekly.com on Sunday that the state has suspended all unarmed combat sports, such as mixed martial arts and boxing, until further notice. The Athletic Commission initially put unarmed combat sports on hold on March 14, pending a March 25 commission meeting where its response to the COVID-19 pandemic would be further solidified. I can imagine right now that the reason why Dana White was so confident that the event could happen in the States would be because they had their own building. So even if it's not a giant building like the Barclays Center or a Stadium Arena or or event like the Honda Center or Staples Center or somewhere that's actually normally big. So I can understand them being like, okay, we'll move the Khabib fight. This is without hindsight. We'll move the Khabib fight, Ferguson fight, in a closed studio building or in a closed gym, in the place where we film the Dana White Challenger Series, because that series takes place in Las Vegas. Like we'll film the fight in that small octagon. We're gonna get less than 10 people. It's gonna be all good. We don't need an actual arena to go and make this event happen. That is what I'm thinking that Dana White and the other UFC representatives were of a month ago when discussing Khabib versus Ferguson. Now, we can't do Vegas anymore. The March 25 meeting was scrapped when Nevada Governor Steve Slosalak on March 22 shut down public meetings in the state, along with all non-essential businesses, until at least April 16, with U.S. President Donald Trump extending nationwide social distancing recommendations until at least April 30. It's likely that Nevada and other states will also extend their orders. Regardless, Bennett told MMA Weekly that there was no direct timeline for unarmed combat sports to return to Nevada. The NSAC will follow the guidance of the science regarding COVID-19 as it moves forward. So Nevada State Athletic Commission statement on unarmed combat sports. As of this date, Sunday, April 5th, the NSAC will not have any unarmed combat events until further notice. We will listen and follow the science regarding COVID-19 and move forward with events accordingly. The health and safety of the fighters, their camps, the fans, and our staff is the number one priority. So it's the title here, How is the UFC moving forward? UFC President Dana White has initially planned to move several events to the Apex facility at its headquarters in Las Vegas, but those plans were scrapped rather quickly when it became apparent that Nevada wasn't likely to approve in such a move. UFC Apex has built in advanced production capabilities with arena space that can be configured to accommodate a variety of live events. But as long as the NSAC is unable to oversee events in the state, the UFC will be unable to produce live events at Apex or at any other Las Vegas venue. No unarmed combat sports promoter will be able to hold an event in Nevada until the order changes. As of Sunday, White was still intending to move forward with UFC 249 on April 18, though he has yet to unveil a revised fight card or a location. So that was a day ago. Today, it was announced that UFC 249 is indeed going to happen no matter what. So we are definitely going to see a fight happening, but there is still no information on where the fight is going to take place in. And if we are listening to Khabib Nurmagomedov and his manager's word and every other fighter's word, they have no clue where the location of the UFC fight is going to take place. I believe, my speculation is that nobody in the UFC knows where the next UFC event is going to take place. Nobody knows where these events, in the grand scheme of things, are going to happen. All he's aiming for is April 18th. April 18th. That will be the night to which we are going to have our UFC events. And speculation has been bouncing back and forth on where the event's going to happen. At one point, it was going to be in Saudi Arabia. It was going to be UAE. That's been scrapped. And now, from Ferguson's Instagram, he's saying that the fight will happen in the States, and it's very likely it's going to happen in the States. And now we're hearing reports that the home base for the UFC, which is in Las Vegas, Nevada, it can't take fight events over there. So in the grand scheme of things, we have no clue where it's going to be. Florida is constantly being thrown out as being a possible location to which MMA events can happen. But there's a recent video that came in virally last week when it was Longshore Beach or Long Wilshire Beach, when the mayor of that city in Florida was having a huge argument with another representative who was part of the state's government there in Florida. They're having a huge argument, which was probably out of control, which became viral. So it made Florida look really bad. And I can imagine the state of Florida, after it was reported on the news that there's a lot of people still partying in the Miami area, it makes them look really bad, and everybody and anybody, especially in California, are making fun of Florida for it. So just overall, just bad press. But I don't think Dana White cares about bad press or not. He's just like, whatever, we're gonna find an event no matter what. One idea was Brazil, and then that place got shut down. So overall, it's getting more slimmer and slimmer of whether or not we can expect UFC 249. Can it happen in someone's house? Yes. That can happen. It can happen, in someone's garage, yeah. Can it happen in someone's state? I'm not really sure at this moment on. It's very complicated, and I'm not sure what to expect from UFC 249. Another fighter who doesn't know what to expect would be Islam Makhachev. Reportedly, he won't compete at UFC 249. Hernandez, his opponent, was expected to fight. So another fight on the UFC 249 card is in a state of flux after TSN's Aaron Bonester reported Islam Makhachev will be unable to fight on April 18th. It's Makhachev. Makhachev was slated to meet Alexander Hernandez, according to Bronstetter. Hernandez is expected to fight a different opponent. UFC already lost his headline bout, beating Khabib, who pulled out of his lightweight championship fight, in order to quarantine during the COVID-19 pandemic. Nurmagomedov has already said travel restrictions were preventing him from leaving Russia in the first place. MMA Junkies Noel King noted Makhachev was effectively in the same boat as Khabib, leading Hernandez to tell King and his camp were all in the dark. It's just like everything else, Hernandez said. When we hear the official word, we all hear the official word, blank, half the time. I wait for a tag on Instagram to know something is locked in. Obviously, with Khabib being stuck in Russia, I imagine Islam is on the same plane out there. Michael Johnson, who's lined up to face Evan Dunham at the UFC Fight Night event on April 25, the week right after this event, threw himself out as an alternative for Hernandez, and I can easily see Michael Johnson be up for that. Some fans are likely to see Makhachev withdrawal as more evidence to why UFC should scrap the show. Altogether, given the logistical headaches and public health concerns posted by the ongoing pandemic. Less than 2 weeks out, UFC 249 still doesn't have an arena locked down after the New York State Athletic Commission ruled out the original location, Brooklyn Barclays Center. ESPN Errol Hawani's reported on Sunday that UFC feels it is very close to securing a new venue for UFC 249. But this was reported before. It was notified that the UFC headquarters, the Apex building, is where they filmed Dana White's Challenger Series and The Ultimate Fighter. Errol Hawani reported this before it was reported on that the Nevada Athletic Commission is going to allow a fight to happen in the state of Nevada. So we still have no location for UFC 249, and according to Hernandez, who is increasingly getting angry about the situation, is being like, I don't know what's going on. I am left in the dark. No one is telling me anything. Khabib has been told that no one's telling him anything, or if someone does tell him something quickly changes. He was told about the UAE thing, and just hours later, he's like, oh, by the way, it's not going to happen because someone told me other piece of information. Errol Hawani is getting information that counters other people's informations. At this point, no one knows what's happening. UFC representatives do not know what's happening. Fighters do not know what's happening. State legislation members do not know how to organize sporting events right now because nobody knows of how they can predict the future when it comes to COVID-19 in the next 2 weeks because of social distancing. So at this point, it's a huge, confusing mess. But we now know at the very least 100% Khabib Nurmagomedov will not fight in UFC 249. It will 100% be Justin Gaethje versus Tony Ferguson officially for the interim title at UFC 249 on April 18th in some undisclosed location. After the short break, let's test out your overall knowledge of mixed martial arts and the UFC. If you think you're smart and you're up to the task, let's test it out after the short break.
Want to know the latest in soccer? Then listen to the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast. From MLS, the World Cup, and the Premier League, we've got you covered. The latest updates, the hottest matches, and news on the league's top players. It's the Golden State Media Concepts Soccer Podcast.
David Beckham scores the goal to take England all the way to the World Cup finals.
Listen now.
So, as an avid MMA fan, I have the tendency of bragging about my knowledge when it comes to mixed martial arts and UFC to my friends and family. So, as a person who considers himself pretty knowledgeable about the history of mixed martial arts and UFC specifically, I try to challenge myself all the time, and you guys should try to challenge yourselves also when it comes to your overall knowledge. So, this is coming in from funtrivia.com, and it asks you, so I'm going to ask you a series of questions. And if you are knowledgeable about mixed martial arts, you should have no problem acing this and getting an A+. So this quiz comes from funtrivia.com, and it says here on the top, this quiz will test your memory of some MMA fights Average score of this quiz is 6 out of 10. The average play here is 873 as of today, which is April 6, 2020. The average grade for this quiz happens to be a D, and hopefully you and I will do well in this quiz. So let's test out our MMA knowledge here. Question number 1. George Rush St. Pierre lost his first title fight defense in which match? His 1999 bout with Rashad Evans, his first match with Matt Hughes, his 2007 bout with Matt Serra, his 2008 match with Matt Serra. GSP's lost his first title defense in his first match against Matt Hughes. That is what I'm going for. Rashad Evans and GSP did not fight in 1999 in the bout against Matt Serra. I think GSP already lost a title fight beforehand fighting against Matt Serra. So I'll go with that. So Mirko, aka Mirko Flipovic, aka Mirko Krokop, suffered his first MMA knockout loss in which match? Suffered his first MMA knockout loss in which match? Josh Barnett's... No, didn't Josh Barnett... Okay, so the options here are Josh Barnett's, Fedor Emelianenko, Gabriel Gonzaga, or Kevin Randleman. I know these people have defeated Mirko, but whether or not they defeat him via knockout, I am unsure. I'd have to go with his... Josh Barnett is my answer here. It's either Josh Barnett or Kevin Randleman. But didn't Krokop defeat Kevin Randleman? Because it's saying here 2004 fight with Kevin Randleman. 2004 Kevin Randleman was a beast. So it's either Josh Barnett or Kevin Randleman. Those are my two options here, and I gotta go with, because I'm pretty sure he's been knocked out before he fought Gabriel Gonzaga. Final answer here would be, if it's Final Conflict, this one was when Josh Barnett was juiced. So I go with Barnett. Number 3, BJ Penn beat Takanori Gomi by a rear naked choke in the third round in which main event? Gomi? Rumble of the Rock K1, Pride Yoshi. Gomi fought in early UFC. Gomi was an early fighter of the UFC. That's what I remembered. I have to go with that. Vitor the Phenom Belfort is from where? Is he from France, Brazil, USA, or Canada? He's obviously from Brazil, not from Canada. Number 5. All these fighters, Matt Hughes, Sean Shirk, GSP, and BJ Penn, have fought each other. Okay, has Sean Shirk fought Penn? But did Sean Shirk fight Matt Hughes? Did Sean Shirk fight Matt Hughes? I say yes. They all fight each other. Yeah, I'm going to go for that. What is Fedor Emelianenko's nickname? The Last Emperor. Alright? Kevin Randleman, Guy Mesger, Renato Babalu Sobral, Alistair Overeem, and Vernon White all have what in common? They have all lost to Fedor via armbar. They all fought in the 2007 Openweight GP Pride Cup. They have all been knocked out by the Iceman Chuck Liddell. They all train at Hammer House. Oh, did Vernon White get knocked out by Chuck Liddell? I know he knocked out Babalu, Overeem, and Guy Mesver, but I'm not sure about Vernon White. I'll go with that one. Been knocked out by the Iceman there. I'm only questioning about Vernon White, though. Did Vernon White get knocked out by Chuck Liddell? Mesger, Babalu, and Overeem definitely did. Which one of these facts about MMA legend Vanderlei Silva are actually true? He earned his nickname from a town rumor about a murder. That's not true. That's not true. He lost a split decision to super heavyweight Mark Hunt. Did he? He knocked out Keith Jardine early in the second round. He was knocked out by Chuck Liddell. That's not true. My only thing here would be he knocked out Keith Jardine? When Keith Jardine was in what division? Keith Jardine did fight in Strikeforce. That's not true. He lost a split decision against Mark Hunt. Wait, did Vanderlei and Jardine ever fight each other? But did he lose? Silva did fight against people a lot more bigger than him. Yeah, I have to go for that. I think he lost a split decision by him losing to a decision victory against Mark Hunt. I don't really see that. I say he knocked out Keith Jardine early in the second round. That's what I'm going to go for. Thiago Pitbull Alves knocked out Matt Hughes in the second round in their first ever UFC meeting, cementing Alves as a top contender. Yes, that is true. I remember that was when Alves was jacked to the grill. He looked like an action figure. It was insane. It was absolutely. I think I remember it was like a UFC countdown event. I think this was around late 2000s when they're talking about top 100 moments ever in UFC history. Thiago Alves defeat Matt Hughes, and the general consensus as to why that's considered a top moment was because, hey, Thiago Alves, man, he was jacked to the grill. He looks even bigger than Matt Hughes, and Matt Hughes always looks gigantic. Kazuchika, the Gracie Hunter Sakuraba, had his first UFC win against who? I should know this one. Guy Mesger. It's Vitor Belfort, BJ Penn, Guy Mesger, or Marcus Silveira. Because I don't think Guy Mesger would win that fight. I can see Sakuraba has not fought BJ Penn. I thought Belfort versus Sakuraba was in Pride. I never thought that would... Oh, wait, was that... No, that didn't happen in Pride. Is it Vitor? It's Vitor or Guy Mesger, one of those two. I'll go with Guy Mesger. Submit answer. And then, how well did I do? And, oh wow, I did pretty poorly on this one actually, sadly enough. I got myself a 5 out of 10. Yikes. So let's do a recap here. George Wrestling Pierce lost his first title defense, in which match his bout with Matt Serra. Okay, that's where I forgot. So, GSP lost his first title defense. He lost a title fight against Matt Hughes, but his first title defense was against Matt Serra. Mirko Kurkop suffered his first MMA knockout loss against... Oh man, I was right. It was either Kevin Randleman or Josh Barnett. The answer was Kevin Randleman. BJ Penn beat Gomi in Rumble on the Rock. I don't remember that event specifically, but 43% of people have answered that correctly, so for the most part, people got that wrong. The Brazil one was correct for Vitor Belfort, where he's from. All these fighters, Matt Hughes, Sean Strick, GSP, GPN, have fought they all have fought each other, so Sean Strick did in fact fight Matt Hughes because they were in the same division as BJ Penn was. The Last Emperor, Fedor Emelianenko, that was correct. Okay, this question that I got wrong here. Which of these facts about MMA legend Vanderlei Silva were actually true? So, he did in fact lose to a split decision against Mark Hunt. I know that Vanderlei Silva did fight Mark Hunt, but I did not know it went via split decision because Mark Hunt's cardio isn't all that strong, and so is Pride Vanderlei Silva, who was always a headhunter more than a prison striker. So, Mark Hunt defeated Vanderlei Silva through split decision. I just thought they fought each other, and I thought they fought each other and Mark Hunt won via unanimous. I didn't think he lost via split decision. That's what I thought. So, Alves knocks out Matt Hughes. That was correct. And dang it. So, Kazuchika Sakuraba had his first UFC win against Marcus Silveira. And now I feel dumb because I remember Guy Mesger was on a roll and he was a champion in the early UFC. He was one of the earlier UFC champions. Man, I feel disappointed on that. I do not remember Sakuraba ever fighting for the UFC, and when I look into it, I can tell why. So, Sakuraba has fought in the UFC, but not UFC 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10, not any of the early numbered UFC events. It happened in UFC Japan. He fought at UFC Japan, which took place December 21, 1997, 4 years after the first ever UFC event, and proceeded to fight the same guy twice in one night. Thank you for listening to the GSMC MMA podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please remember to subscribe to the show and write a nice review. That really helps us. Also, if you can please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and on Instagram. Thank you, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts MMA Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.GSMC.com. GSMCpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.